Hello and greetings. My name is Shwa, and I am the host and founder of a podcast called Light Up with Shwa. It's a weekly podcast on conscious living and parenting. I have a very special guest today. I have Sheila from Seattle. Hello, Sheila. Please,
Hello, Shwa.
please introduce
Yes.
yourself.
So it's Sheila is my first name. Delaney Duke is my last name. So Sheila Delaney being the good Irish name on my side, and I married into a Duke. And I am probably the simplest way to describe what I do now is that I'm a coach. And so I'm a coach that is very much about elevating the human experience. And so that is true for individuals, that's true for women, and I run women's programs to that end. But I also do it in organizations and corporations. So I do a lot of coaching with physicians, with the C-suite in organizations. I do retreat facilitation and a lot of speaking on this subject. And it's really fun for me. The magic is really in being able to help people to access a broader range of their internal resources and help them to be amazed by their own resourcefulness, their own resilience. Um, it's so easy to forget. I think this world would have us forget who we are. And I say no. So
Okay,
I won't have it.
that's interesting. I mean, I had
Yeah.
so many questions when you were talking about that, and I don't want to get into that yet
Okay.
because how do you realize what you just said, and how do people think about that okay, why is the world limiting us and all that? So maybe that will come up later. Right. You're a parent.
I am.
Okay, and
I
you
have two
have.
daughters,
Okay. And
12 and 15.
okay, so without going into your daughters, but we do know that when you are a parent, you have experienced since 15 years. What is your experience as a parent?
Mm. It is the most profoundly, deeply soulful, humbling experience,
Hmm.
the most sacred initiation, the most profound mirror and reflection of my being in the world as I'm confronted with the ways that I parent what I would call well and also not well.
Okay, so you do identify that. You
Oh,
recognize that.
absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay, okay. You're not
Yeah.
a
No.
perfect parent?
Oh, yeah. No.
No? Okay. Is
I
there
aspire.
such a thing as perfect parent?
No.
Okay.
You know, my favorite joke has become I lost my Parent of the Year award again.
Oh,
And to date I've not received it. So, but it's a delight and a wonder and exhausting and exhilarating and traumatizing and empowering and enabling and destroying. It's all the things. I think there is,
well,
which is
that's
why I
interesting.
think of it as such a sacred initiation.
Mm,
That's
nice.
probably my favorite way of thinking of it
Very
for
nice.
them and for me.
So there are times that you enjoy it, and there are times that are challenging, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's just
Usually
to.
that has to do with a carpool.
Ooh, okay. Okay. But yeah, no, no. Uh, was it a conscious decision to become a parent?
Yeah,
Or
it was a very conscious decision. And it's interesting because my husband and I, when we were married 2 weeks before I started law school in Canada, actually in Calgary. And at that time, Shwa, it was interesting. I was so determined that I was going to do this big, successful woman legal track. And, I got the job at this super cool law firm that's multinational. And
hmm.
so I had a conversation with my husband before we were married. And I said, are you going to be okay if I decide I don't want to have kids? And he said, well, and we talked about it a little bit. And we kind of ended up with a wishy-washy answer. But he said, I'd be willing to discuss that.
Oh, wow.
So we got married. And I made sure I kept that door open. That if I really got excited about what I was doing in my life,
Hmm.
that there might be other ways we could bless and be of service into the world if we didn't have kids. And we were married we did wait. So I finished law school and then he did an MBA and we relocated to the States. And so it was a good 7 years. Well, it was about 5 years it came up again. And honestly, it made me laugh at myself prior because it was so just about me being non-committal. Like,
Mm.
as long as you're not locking me into a role of the typical wife with the typical kid, right?
Okay.
It was
That's what you were afraid of.
that's
Yeah, exactly.
exactly right.
Mm.
In my heart of hearts, I know I always wanted children. And so as we came back around, it was almost, he chuckled. I'm sure he knew this about me more than I had a line of sight to it. He's like, yeah, I'm good. so,
So he
so we
knew
went,
he didn't want to be too much like, oh, okay, if you don't want to have kids, I'm not gonna get married or not, you know. So he was marrying you for you, not for
yes,
any other reasons. I think that is the most beautiful thing because then everything can be accomplished.
yes,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I do. And then we were very fortunate, very, very blessed. I know in this world where I have so many dear friends who had such a hard time. We became pregnant right away. I
Mm-hmm.
loved being pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It is probably my favorite time of my whole life. And so I felt like I was really developing this experience with this soul that I was going to have the privilege of being a steward of for a period of time. And so at the time, I had 13 months I was working in an organization while I was moving into coaching and opening my practice.
Mm.
And I would sing to her the whole 50-minute commute in my belly. And we would just
So you
commune.
sing too? Are you a
Oh,
singer?
no,
Not
no,
that type of,
no.
not a professional singer, are you? Okay, okay, okay. Just singing to your child.
Right. I stumble through singing for my children. Yes.
Okay, that's
And
nice.
and it was so fun to reconnect to that part of me. And then when she was 2, we decided to try for the second. And again, we were blessed to not struggle with that. And so it came very quickly. And my eldest, we were standing in line in a grocery line one day, and she doesn't so much talk to strangers. She's quite an introvert. And she turned around to the lady behind us and put her hand on my belly, and she said, "My mom has a baby Emily in her tummy." And I remember I was like, "Honey, it might not be a girl." And I'm having all these things. She's like, "Mom, it's a baby Emily."
Oh,
And
wow. What a
so
confidence.
it really was. And so when it came to it,
Hmm.
and we
That's
found out it
interesting.
was a girl, I trusted that she knew something we didn't. And so we named this second daughter Emily. And so our eldest feels this really special kinship to, I felt it very young by 3. She was so
Hmm.
excited that she had known the name before any of us.
Oh, wow.
So,
And she knew what it was like.
yes,
Yeah. I mean, you hadn't, well, you found out later. Yeah. That's
right,
interesting. Very nice.
exactly.
So, do they have a good relationship?
They
Um,
do, even though they try to fight it.
okay. But they do
So
have.
I feel that they're very good friends.
Okay. That's
And
what's important. I mean, they have to have some, of course, they're
and so
unique. They're both different, right?
and they trigger each other. One is an elegant dancer. She's 15. She goes to part-time school because she's an apprentice at a dance company.
Hmm.
She's danced in St. Petersburg,
What
Russia.
kind of dancing?
She does ballet,
Okay.
particularly
Okay.
classical ballet, but she does all the styles. So she does everything from flamenco to jazz to modern character, theater. She does it all.
Wow.
And so she's very contained and
Mm.
poised and elegant. And my 12-year-old is our ferocious, we watched her in dance class,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like we'd trapped a gazelle in a shoebox. And so
I hope
she was
they
moving.
don't mind when you're talking about them now like this. I hope not.
No, this they wouldn't. Yes, I'm very careful about
Okay,
that.
okay.
And we all laughed. And I thought, this kid needs a wide open field.
Ah,
And so we moved her into soccer. And so she is
she
our
like that?
fierce, competitive,
Oh, nice,
aggressive,
nice.
athletic. Yeah. So she plays
Mm.
high level soccer with a really wonderful team. And so this is the first year she's playing at a level where we're now traveling. So we're to California, we're to Texas, we're
Mm-hmm.
to, so back to the things that make parenting hard, but
Mm-hmm.
also deeply joyful. They've both found their thing.
That's good.
And
That's important.
it
Mm.
is. And
Mm.
so they get to support each other,
Mm.
but also get in each other's faces about it
Mm.
in what I would say is a healthy way.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, that's
as
what's
styles show
important.
up.
Yeah, yeah. I have a question. When you said that the thought came to you that you didn't want to be a parent, maybe. And
Mm.
may I ask,
Of course.
why was that thought there?
I believe that at that time, in my mid 20s, late 20s, I was sorting through what it means to be a feminist.
Okay.
I was sorting through what it means to be the daughter of an immigrant mother, because I'm half Korean. And so my mother didn't, and my grandmother, they came to Canada when my mother was, I want to say 16, 17 in there. And so she had me very, very young. They were married young, had me young. And I know, although she would never have uttered a word, it would have been interesting to see. My mom's a genius. Like, she is a math major. She's got such a sharp, fine mind and a beautiful sense of humor. And she's done a lot. She still works on boards, and she works a lot in refugee placement and travels all over doing this.
Now, you mean now?
Now, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's this work she does in Canada around this. She went to The Hague for a conference on the movement of refugee populations. She's brilliant. And there are small things she said over time that caused me to really wonder, what is it to be a woman and to be a fierce woman? Because I already knew I had a lot of fire that just came with me. And so I wanted the option. So when I was in that place of, what if I don't want to have kids? It was about preserving my right to choose.
Okay. Nice.
I think above all else.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It just came. No, I mean, as you know, we haven't prepared about anything.
Yeah.
So you are actually a Canadian from nationality point of view?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay.
am. So Canadian born and
Can
raised.
we compare America and Canada? With
That-
oh, now the question is now whether to compare the leadership or or the country, or leave one or the other.
Right.
It's your choice.
A whole other podcast.
Yes, exactly. I'm just
Yes.
teasing because I don't want to get into that, because
Right.
North America, we are in North
North
America. Yes,
But I
it's a
am very
beautiful.
glad to have been raised in the Canadian Rockies.
Okay,
That's what
okay,
I will say.
okay, okay.
It was a beautiful way to grow up,
Mm,
especially as a white passing biracial girl and woman in the communities we
What
grew
does
up
this
in.
mean? Can you explain for a person who doesn't understand these terms, like passing
Oh,
by?
yeah.
Like, what does it
Sure.
really mean?
So white passing just means that as I walk down the street, I carry the privilege of my whiteness every place that I go. And I can forget about it, but nobody else does. And so occasionally what happens, because I am half Korean, and I was actually raised more Korean actually than the Irish or the Caucasian side of my family, because my Harmony, my Korean grandmother, was a really important figure in our lives. And she always lived very close to us, and she would come and, we'd spend weekends with her. She was wonderful. And so to be white passing and to walk through meant that I was privy to conversations people would not have, I am confident people would never have around me if they knew that I was biracial. If they knew that I was half Asian.
Because they couldn't tell that you were Asian or half Asian,
No.
right? No, I mean,
I
only could tell, I could tell Irish. I could tell
Right.
that I had that feeling. But
people wouldn't know. And so particularly because I did my undergraduate degree in Southern Louisiana, which was a huge eye-opener to go to the Deep South.
Yes.
As a Canadian, white passing, biracial, who grew up in an English second language area. There were so many immigrants around us in where I went to my elementary school. To go to this place where there was such a split. It was so white and black. And I was so confused. I was, I thought I had stepped into a novel, and sometimes it felt like a trick. It was a very strange experience. But what I would see down there was how clear this hierarchy was, where in Canada, it was still true. I mean, I still carried a white privilege. In the southern states, it was shockingly different. And so people would have conversations about, oh, those poor biracial kids, they're never going to know who they are and nobody's going to accept them. And, I'd engage in the conversation. I'd try to stay curious. That was I'd say if I had a soul journey down there, it was how to stay open to the human behind the words as they're going through their journeys. And we would eventually get to the place where I would drop the card and say, well, as a biracial woman who has seen how the Korean side of my family can be treated, where they might go into a hotel and look for a hotel room and there's none available, but I would go in and suddenly there's a room available, right? To have
So
such
you
a
have experienced that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I have. Um, and then also on the flip side, to see the respect for the elders, where we would go to my grandmother's church, and she would get out of the car, and without even thinking about it, my brother would move to one side of her, I would move to the other, and she would take our arms. And as we would walk towards the church, she was such a matriarch.
Yes.
The sidewalk would part,
Yes.
and people would bow.
That's very cultural. That's very
Very
cultural
cultural.
in Asian, East Asian.
Yes.
Yes.
It was beautiful.
Yes.
So I'd have that. So I had these very
Oh,
unique, distinct experiences, um, which I'm so grateful for, Shwa. I'm so
yes.
grateful to have a complex set of lenses through which to look at the world.
And you are
So,
able to navigate through it without much, what I should say here. I mean, you're fine with it. You have
yeah,
been doing
there was
it.
no, I didn't feel any trauma. I
Yeah.
didn't feel
Mm.
any, but I feel like I was also that kid who was gifted from a very young age. If I think about, if you will, the gifts that I was handed right from birth, one of them was the awareness of knowing who I was.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
important.
it really was. And it meant in elementary school, my aunt would describe me as precocious, and she'd just say, I asked her recently in the last 5 years, what do you mean by that? You've always said that. She said, you could silence a room with these questions you would ask
Hmm.
that nobody even understood. And, it was said very affectionately and kindly,
Hmm.
but it meant I had a deep awareness of who I was. And so my struggles or quests or searches for character or growth or maturity were less about that than for some other people. It also meant I didn't understand peer pressure. I didn't know what it was to not just say no. And so it was difficult to find compassion for because I couldn't relate.
Hmm.
But I would watch my friends and they'd say, oh, yeah, they made me drink. And it just was so confounding I'm like, they can't make you drink. You lift the glass. It was so confounding.
Oh.
Honestly, until I became a lawyer. And then in the professional world, feeling peer pressure in a different way. Because I happen to not drink very much. Alcohol does not agree with the Korean side of me. That is just true. And people would actually say things like, well, in business, we can't trust people we can't drink with. And suddenly I was like, oh, wait, what does this mean? Am I okay like this? Am I okay to be a lawyer? Can I be who I want to be? It ignited all of my feminist buttons going, well, is this an old boys club then? Are we dealing with a patriarchy?
Hmm.
But that's truly the first time I felt the disruptive undercurrent of something akin to peer pressure. And I was 30. So different.
Interesting question. So, do you think, and thank you for all that, what you said, really. It was like, would like to ponder on that actually. Don't want to go into all the other questions. So, because these
Right.
are the things, these are deep things, and one has to really feel it, and understand, and that's the learning. Anyways, um, so let's talk a little bit about your parents. So, do you think your parents were good parents for you?
I
Did you
do.
learn anything from them?
I did. There were, and they were very young, as I'd mentioned. So
Yes.
they were 20 and 21
Oh, that's
when they
not
got
very
married.
young.
Yeah.
Uh,
And they were really, I always felt so sure that I had a place to come home to.
mm,
And I don't mean just the physical home.
yes.
I meant this idea that I was able to take for granted their unconditional love. Even when I was a pain in the neck teenager fighting with my mom
Mm,
and putting her at wit's end and wearing her. And I had a very particular way of being obstinate that was not bad behavior, but really obstinate is the best way.
mm,
And they met me where I was. So the way that I grew up, we were at that time, I was very involved in a church, and we traveled as a pack of 20 or 30 kids every weekend, whether we had youth group activities or if we were all just hanging out. And as a parent now, I am more in awe of the fact that my mom could receive 25 kids. So she always amazed me I didn't appreciate it then. Now I am amazed at the fact she could receive 25 kids on half an hour's notice. And my parents, somewhere along the line, made a conscious decision, I assume. I should talk to her about this, to be a gathering place for the kids. And so my dad in particular was a really safe place. He unfortunately, was first diagnosed with cancer when I was about 10 or 11 with colon cancer. And so we go through as a family surgeries, remissions, chemo remissions, surgeries, remissions, one miraculous healing. And then he got it again and was diagnosed terminal when I was 18. And this is probably where the rubber really hits the road in terms of them being really wonderful parents who understood me. Is I wrote them a letter from university saying, I want to come home and be the primary caretaker during the day. Will you let me drop out of school and come home and do this? And they not only allowed it, my dad wrote me a very long letter saying, yes, we accept this. And even while he was in the midst, of course, as so often happens, I learned so much more about living from my father's dying than I can point to in any intense area of my life. And he was systematically paralyzed as the cancer moved up his spine from the feet up, so that by the time he actually died, he was paralyzed from the waist down. And all the way through, he was so intentional about both asking for what he needed and making sure I got out of the house. So Sheila, you need to go for a bike ride. And there were times I would love to be able to say every day was perfect and I was the perfect selfless caretaker, but there were times I'd go and I'd hide in my room just because I wanted a little downtime, and he would let me have it. There was this wisdom that lived in the house with us that helped us to find each other's rhythms that worked really well. And my mother worked so hard during this time, and I had a younger brother, 3 years younger. And through all of that, when I think about the fact that we lived with cancer for really 8 or 9 years in various different ways, it never took over. They never allowed the cancer to take over. I still sometimes think of cancer as our fifth family member, but my parents never let it take over. It was very much, we were allowed to be self-indulgent, self-focused, normal teenage kids as far as my parents were concerned. Although really what I know is we both modified our behavior because there was cancer. We were thoughtful, fundamentally kind kids. But yeah, there was so much expansiveness. There was so much, my dad I was always a writer, and my dad was always interested in what I had to write. My mom was always very logical and analytical. And I remember when I thought about going to Louisiana after my dad died, I wanted to go really far away and have the opportunity to heal. But close enough, they still spoke English. And so Louisiana kind of hit the mix. I had a really good friend down there. And so I thought I would just go. And my mom I had to build a business plan. And so there were flip charts, and there was a budget, and there was, all those kinds of things. So there was a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a long answer. But
Amazing parents.
They really, they were. My dad was a wonderful gift. And my mom continues to show me what it means to be a fierce, fiery woman.
And you took it well.
Thank you. I hope that I continue to.
Yes, that's very nice. So it means you felt safe, and I don't even have to ask all that because you just covered it.
All of it. I did. And I was a quirky kid. I had some gifts of perception that were out of the box.
For example, can you share any?
Yeah. So here's actually a good one. This is probably my favorite. When I was a little kid, I remember there was always this man at my window, which sounds like the start of a really creepy story, but it's not. And it wasn't until I was probably maybe 7 or 8, it suddenly struck me. It wasn't weird that there was a man at my window every night. Mm-hmm. It wasn't weird that I could see him through my curtains, whether my curtains were open or closed. What was weird is that I was on the second floor and I didn't understand what he was standing on. Right. So in my young mind. So I went to my dad and I said, there's a man at my window every night, And you can imagine as a parent, once he had his parental what response, and then he wound down and said, well, tell me about him. What do you mean? And I said, well, and he asked me if I was afraid. And I said, no, he's watching over me. But he's always on the outside of the window. And I don't understand what he's standing on. And so my dad had me describe him. And so I'm describing what I can see, the physical features. And my dad finished the description for me. And he said, oh, is he wearing a red hat? And I said, he is. And my dad said, oh, he used to visit me too as a kid. And we just went, oh, cool.
Wow.
And he didn't make a big deal out of it. It wasn't a huge deal. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't make me crazy and say, oh, there's nobody at your window. Look, let's open the curtain. See, there's nobody. He didn't make it do that. It was so spacious and permission giving. And so when I would have prophetic dreams or things like that, he was always a safe place to go with that, because I understand now that he had some of that himself. And it didn't happen all the time, but
Right.
But again, as parents dealing with that unknown, nobody went to she's hallucinating. Nobody went to she's crazy. Nobody went to any of those places.
But see, so that if he experienced, it's good that he could acknowledge that and give you space and all. But this is a good lesson for parents that you're saying that, let's say one of the parents or whoever didn't experience something like that, and their child comes and does or says something like this, what you were just saying, can be of a different kind of a story or whatever. How would you say, not react to it, but
Right.
listen to it and listen to the story or listen to your child and let it be and not overreact? Because what do you think that can cause if you just dismiss it or say, oh, see, there's nothing? Is that a good idea to do that? Because sometimes children do get scared, or it depends on if
Yeah.
they're scared or not scared. Is that the
Right.
differentiation?
For me, that would be the differentiator.
Okay.
I would say because he checked and he knew I wasn't afraid, I'm so grateful he approached it the way he did. If he had gone in, and frankly, my mom, who's really open, might have been confused and might have gone to, let's open the curtains, let's look, do you see?
So they never did that?
No, never, not one time.
Oh,
Not
interesting.
one time. And I think the effect would have been, Shwa, I think it's so important that we be able to trust our own faculties. And I don't mean just our five senses. I mean the subtle senses as well. And to have undermined that at such a young age would have created a split or division, I believe, that is as big as a soul split from body, right? In terms of, what do I trust? What do I lean into? And if I can't trust that knowing that is mysterious, and I'm sure lots of people will listen to this and think, that's a crazy lunatic story. And and that's my offering. I'm not attached to being believed, because my parents gave me so much space to remember I have nothing to prove.
Okay.
I don't have to defend it.
Amazing. Very
rigorously.
nice.
I don't have to make other people believe it, because their journeys are their own. Mine is my own.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
That was the upside.
Very nice.
I really think you have on your website, is it Khalil Gibran talking about
Yes.
children? Yes. That is such a meaningful description for me, because I have never, ever felt that my children are an extension of me.
That was my next question, and you just figured
Oh.
it out. See, you are reading my mind. Oh my God, there is something. Oh, I'm not supposed to react. I have to be like Sheila's dad. Okay.
Well, but sometimes it's fun to be filled with the wonder of it too, right? As long as I'm not freaking out. But I do think they are not. They are these beautiful souls that I have been entrusted with to steward. And would I give my life for my children? Absolutely. Would I give in an urgent situation? Would I give, anything? Yes and no. If they were an extension of me, I think I would have attachments to a good mom looks like, the one who's completely selfless, never gets upset, never loses her cool, never deals with depression. I've dealt with depression. But because they are extensions of me, and I have this this marrow deep trust that I am part of their journey, that I am